So, for this section, we're going to kind of look at some case studies. We're going to be comparing um, freedom struggles and two big ones that, again, are going to have some similarities, but also some vast differences. Is going to be the ending of British rule from India, and then also is going to be South Africa, which again is going to be a little bit of a different critter because they fit into this period, but then there's certain aspects of their independence movement that doesn't fit within this period either. So, before 1900, few people in the Indian subcontinent thought of themselves as quote unquote Indians. Again, just like the way Europe had been for quite some time, their identity or their cultural identity was primarily local. It was, where they were immediately from, the town, the village, and they're even going to define themselves, based upon religion, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Hindu. And then within Hindu, what series of gods and goddesses, do they worship? And in fact, here you want to put down next to A that Europe had been like this as well. And really, one of the interesting things about India is that it is so incredibly diverse. So, trying to create any type of a larger unity, either done by the English or any other Europeans coming before them, or even the Indians themselves, is going to be a little bit of a challenge. The ironic thing is going to be that English rule is actually going to promote this growing sense of Indian identity. And just in the way that the English rule and govern India is actually going to be the reason for this growing sense of this individual identity. Because unlike earlier foreign rulers, the British didn't assimilate. They don't try to blend in with the Indians. So the Indians are going to share more similarities with each other than they do to their rulers. Because, like, if you remember, the last time we kind of talked about India, we're talking about them with the Mughal Empire. So the Mughals are coming in and they're attempting to the best that they can, blend into, kind of weave themselves into what's already going on within India. And the English just simply don't do that. They make sure that they keep themselves at a distance from the Indians and make sure that they keep the Indians at a distance from themselves. This is especially going to be more pronounced towards the middle of the 19th century with the Sepoy Rebellion. There's a huge amount of distrust on both sides, and the English kind of react by trying to keep the Indians as much at an arm's length as humanly possible. Another thing that binds these guys together, or binds the Indians together, is, again, the way that the British rule. British communications, administrative networks, schools, and the use of English is going to bind India together. I mean, all the Europeans want to make sure that their areas are easy to govern. And one of, or several of the things that the English do actually help to create a more common identity within these very, very diverse people within the subcontinent. Um, in fact, you want to put down here next to B, underneath number two, you just go ahead and put it in this space here because it's not a very big note. You want to put down that this helped create a modern Indian identity. This helped create a modern Indian identity. One of the first steps, and again, you're going to kind of see this also within Africa, within South Africa as well. One of the first steps of creating these independence movements is going to be to create a collective group of like-minded Indians or like-minded individuals. So in 1885, we have the establishment of the INC, or the Indian National Congress. This is made almost exclusively of English educated high caste Hindus. So these are the ones that the English would have sent back to England in order to educate. So these are very, very high born, well-educated Hindus. At first, they're going to make some very moderate demands. I mean, really, all they want is greater role in the life of British India. You want to go ahead and put a star by B. I mean, this isn't unreasonable. A lot of cases they have gone to school and they have had close relationships with some of the members of the ruling class, some of the English that are serving within the imperial government. And their, question is what makes them better suited to rule us? We have the exact same level of education, there's a lot of similarities. Why is this English guy more set and more prepared to do that governing thing than, an Indian will? The British, of course, are going to mock them and reject their claim to speak for all Indians. Um, so this is going to be a little bit of a slow burn, and you will see this in some other independence movements here as well. The INC is only going to begin to gain a wide following after World War One. And you want to put down here next to D rather, underneath number 3. You want to put down in 1917, the British promised future development of self-government. In 1917, the British promised future development of self-government. And honestly, this is not necessarily going to be something unique. Prior to World War One, they're going to promise the exact same thing to Ireland, and it kind of gets put on pause as a consequence of World War One. And they're going to do that with some of their other parts of the empire and some of their protectorates as well after World War One. One of the things that is going to really kick this Indian independence movement into the next level is going to be the role of Gandhi. So, a couple things here with him, real quick, is that he studied law in England, wasn't a very successful lawyer. Just prior to the turn of the century, he takes a job in South Africa. And for him, this is going to be transformative. You want to put down here next to B that he experienced racism. He experienced racism. I mean, he's experienced racism before, but with something that we're going to talk about in South Africa, the system of apartheid, he recognizes or he experiences it on another level. He eventually is going to develop a political philosophy of truth force. You want to go ahead and put a star by C. Once he's back in India, Gandhi is going to become the leader of the INC, and he ultimately is going to attack not only colonial rule, but also the treatment of India's untouchables and also the evils of modernization. He really goes and kind of starts to attack some of the things that he believes that is keeping India in a very subservient place. The catch is going to be, and you want to put you want to put a note here next to E underneath number 4. You want to put that this caused him problems later. This caused him problems later. A couple of things here with Gandhi is that he embraced the efforts to mobilize women. I mean, he really goes and he sees their usefulness. He goes and he asserts the spiritual and mental equality of women and men, which is going to be, again, one of the reasons why he's going to advocate for women participating in the movement. I mean, he essentially is going to preach this notion of equality not only across the sexes, but also across the caste system as well. It's one of the reasons why he wants to improve the plight of the untouchables, who are the lowest group within the Indian caste system. The thing is that not everyone is going to agree with Gandhi. I mean, his ideas are kind of radical in the minds of many. This is going to be especially important to a growing Muslim and Hindu divide. I mean, this divide is not anything new. This is the divide that we've looked at, ever since we looked at India for the first time, that you have a Hindu majority and an Islamic minority. And depending on what we're talking about, that Islamic minority may be trying to rule the Hindu majority. Ultimately, what this division is going to create is in 1906 is the creation of something known as the All Indian Muslim League. You want to put a star here by D, and then you want to put a note here on the other side of D. You want to put down this is in response to the INC. This is in response to the INC. And we'll talk about why here in a couple minutes, but you know, the basic story is that you have this Islamic minority that isn't convinced that the INC, the Indian National Congress, which is made up almost universally of Hindus, is actually going to pay attention to some of the issues that the Muslims have within India. They're kind of concerned that there's going to be persecution. They're kind of concerned that their population is just going to be swept underneath the rug and ignored. So, in response to this concern, they, of course, create the the All Muslim League. And again, some of this is out of response that some Hindu politicians are going to define the nationalist struggle in religious terms. Ultimately, we have Muhammad Ali Jinnah, head of the Muslim League, who's going to argue that the regions of India with a Muslim majority should become a separate state. And this is going to be Pakistan, which is translates into the island of the pure. Gandhi, however, is going to not be for this. Gandhi is going to want to is going to want to keep colonial India together. And that's going to be one of the big moments of difference between the leaders of these two groups. Ultimately, soon after the end of World War II, we're going to have independence, and it's going to create two countries where you have, Pakistan, which is going to be Islamic, and it's divided into two wings, more than 1,000 miles apart. And then you also have India, which is secular, but of course, it's going to be the majority of the population is going to be Hindu. Ultimately, some of Gandhi's ideas are going to come back and quite literally cost him his life. And in 1948, a Hindu extremist is going to assassinate Gandhi. You want to put a star here by number 8, and then you want to put down here next to 8. Do you want to put that the assassin didn't like Gandhi's religious views / tolerance towards the untouchables and Muslims. Now, with the next case study, South Africa, again, slightly different critter. Again, although there will be some parallels that we're easily going to be able to make. The first difference is that South Africa is going to win freedom from Great Britain in 1910. They're going to win freedom prior to World. So in a lot of ways, they're almost sort of kind of like a generation ahead of what the Indians and what a lot of other parts of empire are. Its government is going to be controlled by a white settler minority even after independence. And this white settler minority is going to be a little unique. And the fact that the white population is split between those of British descent, who are going to have economic superiority, and Afrikaners or Boers of Dutch descent that had political dominance. So we already kind of have within the population already, set up for some political struggles and some economic struggles and some turmoil there. And then you're also going to add on to that some of the incredibly horrible things like apartheid that this white settler minority is going to do to the Black indigenous majority. The Afrikaners had attempted to win independence from the British in the past with the Boer War, and they're not able to do so. The one thing that both white groups can agree with is that they both are going to feel threatened by any move towards black majority rule. I mean, these guys are really kind of concerned because from day one, as soon as white settlers showed up into South Africa, going back to Dutch settlers and even, displaced French Huguenot, French Protestants, they're going to be horrible to anybody that doesn't look like, a pasty, slice of Wonder Bread covered in mayonnaise. So there is this very anti-black vibe, kind of coming from day one. And as there are more and more threats to that white dominance, you're going to see that the white minority is going to really do a lot of things to crank down on the abilities and the opportunities of the black majority. Now, economically, as a former colony, South Africa is going to be fairly successful because by the early 1900s, South Africa had a mature industrial economy. I mean, these guys are, you know, economic rock stars for the most part. By the 1960s, they had major foreign investments and loans. I mean, so in general, and you want to put down here next to A underneath number 4, that a former colonial success, at least from the outside. A former colonial success, at least from the outside. I mean, on paper, these guys are going to look as though they won the, decolonization lottery. I mean, these guys look as though they have a strong, stable government. They have an economic system that is the strongest within Africa and has a lot of serious foreign investment going on. But the catch is that just below the surface, it's not all peaches and cream. In fact, the black South Africans are going to be extremely dependent upon the white controlled economy. And the issues of race are going to be overwhelmingly Protestant. And this is going to be reflected in the apartheid laws separating the races. So next to A here, underneath number 5, you want to put a star. And then you want to put down here next to A, still underneath number 5, do you want to put down that apartheid goes back to the colonial era? When England created it, when England created it to rule more effectively. When England created it to rule more effectively. What apartheid does is that it allows at base a very, very small, or what the apartheid laws allow is a very, very small European population or descendant of European population to easily control an overwhelmingly African or Black African majority. It keeps them in a very, very subservient spot. It keeps them incredibly dependent economically, politically on the Europeans. And the thought is that this will keep that large majority in line. And again, just like just like in India, there is going to be a response uh, to some of these apartheid laws, or rather to the apartheid laws, with the creation of a national congress. And this is going to be created a little bit later, where in 1912 we're going to have the creation of the ANC, or the African National Congress. Like the INC, or like India's INC, it's going to consist of elite Africans who wanted a voice in society. Guys, you want to go ahead and put a star here by A underneath number 6. I mean, these are going to be Africans that are largely European educated. And again, they're going to make some of the similar arguments that the members of the INC did. Like, what makes these people of European descent better able to govern or allows them to justify these apartheid laws, these oppressive notions, these oppressive ideas upon this overwhelming Black population. For 40 years, the ANC is going to be peaceful and moderate. Again, almost exactly the same way that the INC. Catch here is, unlike with Gandhi, who is pushing, women participation, the women here at the ANC are going to be denied full membership until 1943, but they're going to take action in other arenas, including protests and boycotts. Women won't be participating until 1943 fully, but they're going to be doing some things to further the cause in kind of an unofficial capacity. In the 1950s, we're going to continue to be nonviolent and we're going to be doing some acts of civil disobedience. However, again, kind of similar to what the English do in India, the response here is going to be with overwhelming repression. What ultimately here is going to turn the tables and is going to take the ANC from being really very peaceful to being less than peaceful is going to be an incident that I want you to put down here next to E. You want to put down here that the Sharpsville, Sharpville massacre, 69 unarmed demonstrators were shot. The ANC was banned. And its leadership was imprisoned. And its leadership was imprisoned. And then you want to put this in parentheses. You want to put down this was a turning point for the ANC. This was a turning point for the ANC. As a consequence of the Sharpsville massacre, something is going to switch with the ANC, where now the underground nationalist leaders are going to turn to sabotage and assassination. I mean, this goes from being peaceful to now being a banned organization that just simply isn't going to be passive anymore. They're not going to do acts of civil disobedience because acts of civil disobedience hasn't gotten them anywhere. It's gotten a lot of people killed, it's gotten them banned, and it's gotten their leadership, including Mandela, thrown in jail for it. What really, again, is another transformative moment is going to be the Soweto uprising in 1976. And it really is, the start of this next generation of spreading of the violence. Once this violence kind of reaches a worldwide audience and the explanation for this violence, what you start to get here in South Africa is growing international pressure. In response to apartheid, you're going to see that South African teams are going to be excluded from international sporting events. There's going to be economic boycotts, withdrawal of private investment funds. I mean, there is a huge outcry internationally as a result of this apartheid. Because of this international outcry, you're going to see South Africa going from looking like this economic rock star, this economic powerhouse, to really being struggling because no one wants to participate in any type of real big economic, foreign investment type of activity with them. In response to this, negotiations to deal with apartheid begin in the late 1980s, and many key apartheid policies are going to be abandoned. Nelson Mandela is going to be free, and the ANC is going to be legalized. Ultimately, here in 1994, national elections brought the African National Congress to power. And by and large, apartheid was ended without major bloodshed. Um, you want to put down here next to A. You can actually put it right underneath because I know that your page ends with A. You want to put down here, please, a series of trials, a series of trials and commissions were held to explore the horrors of apartheid. However, the remnants of this policy still exist. However, the remnants of the policy still exist. There still is an amazing gulf in wealth between the white minority within South Africa and the black majority. You still have areas that are very, very much, unofficially segregated and are still remnants of apartheid. I mean, South Africa, while it's gotten rid of apartheid on the law books, there's still a lot of elements and cultural remnants and social remnants of apartheid still existing within South Africa even today.